Welcome to the ZDRB on November 12th, 2013. The ZDRB agenda and staff reports are available for viewers at home on the town website, townofyountville.com. ZDRB meetings will be broadcast live on Channel 28 via Napa Valley TV and live web streaming on the town's website. If you would, please turn off your cell phones, and while addressing the board here, the ZDRB, please state your name and state your name for the record, and please remember to speak into the microphone, obviously. And I'll turn it over to Sandra for a roll call.
Vice Chair Scoggins.
Present.
Member Cook. Present. Member James.
Here.
Member Laz. Here. Let the record reflect that Chair Durham is excused.
Righty.
You guys turn the volume up.
Hello. It's up. Okay, yeah, I'll be, I just wanted to let everyone know that I will be here for the voting of the first proposal, but then when we go into hearing the second, I'll have to leave, but that's not a voting, right? That's not a vote, the second one?
Well, it is a recommendation.
Okay.
Vote for recommendation.
Okay.
Perfect. So we'll, I guess we'll do an adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion for that?
A motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Adopted. And I guess we will have no minutes today, so no need for a minute approval. And next on the agenda, we will do a public comment. 5-minute limitation per speaker, please, if there's anyone that would like to step forward. Doesn't appear to be. All right. And we will not need a consent today for the agenda. There's no items. And we'll go into item 7, the public hearing, master sign plan amendment for Summerston Priest Ranch Tasting Room.
Right. Good evening. Tonight you have before you an amendment to the master sign plan for Summerston and Priest Ranch. And the proposal is to change out the Summerston signage for Priest Ranch signage, which is one of their brand names, and it's one that they want to highlight at this property. The master sign plan was approved in 2009, and the Summerston building was allocated 20.5 square feet of approved signage. They designed and installed that signage, and this is the proposal that we're looking at tonight to replace it. This existing sign here is on the west elevation. It's the main sign between the first and second floor windows. It's an approximately 8 square foot sign that the applicant proposes replacing with about a 7 square foot sign for Priest Ranch and Summerston Estate. Priest Ranch is in approximately 12-inch tall letters, where Summerston Estate is in 3-inch tall letters, and it would feature the Priest Ranch style and logo, which you see here, which is black and gray. We will be painted directly onto the building exterior in acrylic paint. And this existing sign is Weinart Ranching, located on the portico, and the applicant proposes removing it and replacing it with a projecting sign that would be perpendicular to the building so that it could be read from the sidewalk. You see the location of the proposed sign here, and it's it would be set off the building by 1 foot, and it's a 2-foot circle diameter sign, which would bring it to within 6 feet of the back of the sidewalk, which you see here. The sign is, as I mentioned, a 24-inch diameter circle constructed of aluminum. It's 2 inches thick, and it will be in a black and gray finish. It will be powder coated, the applicant has confirmed, and that staff is definitely supportive of that for long-term wear and maintenance of the sign. The third sign is on the north elevation, and this is the existing sign and the mural that's above the sign, both of which will be removed for this Priest Ranch tasting logo, again painted on the building. And here's another reminder of the aesthetic of the sign. All three signs will feature lights, gooseneck lights from above that are directed onto the signs. It's a traditional sign lighting that's intended to illuminate the sign but not really present glare or spill beyond that. So I guess the first issue before you is the number of proposed signs, and master sign plan properties are permitted to have one wall or suspended sign and one monument sign. When this project was approved in '09, the ZDRB approved an exception for the second wall-mounted sign on the north side of the building in place of the monument sign, because this is a small two-tenant property and it would essentially function the same way. Generally, monument signs are perpendicular to the street, and this serve that same purpose. Tonight, the request before you is for an additional sign on the west-facing elevation, and it would require a second exception from you. It is important to note that it would replace this wine, art, and ranching sign, which is essentially a separate and independent sign from the main sign, Summerston sign, but it was counted as one when originally approved. And the perpendicular sign really serves the same purpose and is viewed as somewhat of an equivalent. I'm trying to go to the front of the building. So we have made the exception findings in the staff report, and we think those can be made for the property to allow this additional sign. Projecting signs also need additional findings, and those are found in the staff report. Those are the elevation they can be mounted, that they can't be above the eave line, that they need to be a certain thickness, and with rules on the illumination, and these meet all of those findings as well. The sign lighting is something new to this property, since the existing signs are backlit, and this would be more of a focus light on the face of the sign. There would be 3 lights above this sign that you see here, 2 above the medallion sign and 2 on the north elevation. And you have in your packet the lighting specification, and it's an 8-watt gooseneck light that can be fitted with a cap to control glare, and which can have a focused optic to eliminate spill, and we're recommending that those qualities be in the conditions of approval. We are only recommending 3 conditions of approval, all of which the applicant agrees with, and the third of which I'll mention here, which is a directional sign for the parking lot, and that's to advise motorists that the driveway is in the rear to hopefully, so it'll be better used in the future. It's not always full. I understand from the applicant that the chamber often uses the lot, and this sign could be something that's specific to the tasting room that states Priest Ranch parking in the rear, and hopefully it'll be beneficial to the business as well. So we are recommending approval, and the applicant is here tonight to present his project.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
None.
No.
Do you have a question, or do you want me to?
No.
Okay, perfect. Great. We will hear from the applicant.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Good evening. My name is Craig Becker, General Manager, Winemaker, co-founder of Summerston. And what we're really presenting tonight is a kind of classic fine tuning of our business model. We started out at Summerston Wine Co. with 3 brands in 1 location in this place. And we did a really good job of confusing our customers as to who we are, where we are, and what we're trying to sell. So about 18 months ago, we switched it up, and we stopped presenting all 3 brands in the tasting room and focused on Priest Ranch. The price points seemed to work well with the clientele in Yountville. We sort of punched all 3 brands separately. The Summerston Estate is our 1,600-acre property in the Eastern Hills, and that's what we showcase there. We're proposing that this is called Priest Ranch, and we sell and focus on Priest Ranch wines. So like I said, we do have these other brands, the Summerston Estate, the Priest Ranch Tasting Room, and then High Flyer. High Flyer is kind of our sort of under the table wine that we still will sell in Yountville, but it's not a focus.
Is that it? Great.
Is there any, I think there's a couple more.
Oh, there are, sorry.
So basically what we're trying to achieve by this additional pendulum sign is telling customers what we are. Our neighbors down the way have signs similar to this, and one of our biggest hurdles has been to sort of let customers know from the outside that we're a tasting room. And as we do that, our business grows and is more effective. I wanted to point out that there are other businesses that have more than 2 signs. These are some of them. So we're not trying to be totally different, we're just trying to operate. And if you have any questions, thanks for your
We'll
consideration.
open it up for questions for the applicant.
None.
No.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open it up to public comment. All righty, then we'll move right along to ZDRB reviewing the applicant's proposal. Who would like to start?
I'll start. I like the idea of including a sign that says tasting room. I think that would be helpful, and we've approved things like that for other businesses. But I also believe that we have to look at these exceptions as if they would become a standard town-wide. So I can't say that I'm really in favor of adding a 3rd sign to become a standard for a business. I could see adding either the sign that's on the side of the building, leaving that one, or the one that projects out over the front, which is, I think, a nice choice, but not all 3 signs. I think it's getting to be a bit too much, and I would hate to see that on every building in town.
Karen or Jason?
I find nothing to object to.
Neither do I. I think it's helpful that it says tasting room, and I understand why they're doing it, so I don't oppose it.
I'm in the majority on that in terms of my perspective. I think it's yeah, without being redundant, I think it's fine. So I guess we'll invite a motion then in that regard.
I will move to approve this project as presented after having first made the findings as delineated in the staff report, numbers 1 through 5 on page 3, and the second set of exception findings, page 4 of the staff report, 2A through 2H, and including the recommended conditions of approval as noted on attachment A.
Second?
A second.
Sorry.
We need a vote.
We need a vote, I guess. Sorry. So,
You just asked for a vote.
All in favor?
all in favor, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
That's not on my notes. Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was fast. All righty, on to agenda item 8, we will do a discussion and presentation around the temporary structure permit and design review for masonry Napa Valley.
All right. Tonight you have before you a request from Masonry to temporarily use the vacant parcel for the north for a period of up to 24 months. And the applications before you are design review for the temporary structures, for temporary structure permit, for a structure to remain in place for a year, and potentially an exception to exceed that 1-year period. The request by Masonry is to locate both office space and fine art storage, which is currently housed on the property across the street at the Stewart project, and they anticipate losing their lease there sometime in the near future when the Stewarts pull a building permit and proceed with construction. It's unknown exactly when that'll happen. It could occur later this year if we continue to have a dry season. It probably more likely is going to occur sometime in the spring of 2014. But when it does occur, Masonry will need to relocate that off-site office space and fine art storage that supports the masonry business that's adjacent to this vacant parcel. The parcel that's outlined in red was recently purchased by Restoration Hardware, and Michael Polinsky is the VP of Wine and Antiquities with Restoration Hardware, and he's been appointed the representative for the future development of the site, including the proposed temporary use that's before you tonight. And before I move any further, I should mention that the project before you is before you in an advisory capacity. We're seeking to get your recommendation to pass on to the town council on the different applications. So we understand from Mr. Polinsky that Restoration Hardware intends to redevelop the site shortly, and we understand that that will include a ground floor commercial use and perhaps a second floor use for masonry office space. We haven't seen an application, and we haven't been in in-depth discussions with them, so we don't know the exact scope of the project, nor do we know or understand the timeline, but the applicant indicates that they would hope they'd have their entitlements and building permits within 2 years, which is the term of this temporary use, which is essentially for the term between the time they lose their lease at Stewart until they complete construction on this vacant parcel and then can relocate off-site. And that's the temporary use is to keep the office and fine art storage support functions in town and adjacent to their existing business rather than being forced to move out of town for this office space. So the temporary structures chapter of the zoning ordinance provides that staff has the authority to approve a temporary use of 6 months or shorter, but that the council is the approving body for a temporary use of 6 months to a year, and it provides that in no case shall a temporary use exceed a 1-year period. The staff, under a 10-day notice of pending action, approved 4 storage containers at the rear of the parcel, 3 of which you see here, and granted that's very faint. And those are for a period of 6 months, starting when they're installed and being used. So that 6-month period has not started ticking yet. Since receiving that approval, Masonry has determined that it would be helpful to house the office functions on site as well. So they propose replacing one of the approved storage containers with a double-wide trailer that's approximately 1,400 square feet, and this would house 6 employees and include conditioned space for the fine art storage. It would be located on the south end of the existing parking lot, leaving the parking spaces on the north end available for use. The applicant also proposes adding some landscaping at the back of sidewalk and at these 2 triangle planters between the front and rear half of the property to provide some level of screening and improvement for the property for the temporary use. Probably the biggest question before you would be what a reasonable period of the temporary use would be. And as I mentioned, the temporary structures chapter of the code limits structures to 1 year. So an exception would have to be approved to approve a longer period. And those exception findings are very similar to variance findings where there's some unique aspect of the property, some physical aspect that deserves this type of consideration, and that it's not and that it's treating all property owners fairly rather than singling this one out for maybe some special treatment. So if the findings cannot be made, that would be looking at a 1-year period rather than 2 for the structure. And we know that we probably Masonry may not have approved office space to move into a year. So approving a 1-year use perhaps sets the town up for needing to approve or needing to at least consider a request by the applicant to extend that period for another year. We would hope that the project moves along and that within a year or two, it is ready to occupy the new building. But we throw the question out there that what if something happens and we have this temporary use in place? Temporary structure permits are really intended to be for a short period of time rather than a more long-term use of the property. Although in this case, it does use a vacant parcel and it does help an existing business that's losing their office space for the period of time they need to get up and running. So there's an option that we could include a condition that the applicants submit a performance security that's in an acceptable form and amount to the town that would ensure that the buildings would be removed at some point. One thing to look at too is the extended period of time once construction commences on the new project, when it's used both as a temporary, both as a construction office site as well as office for masonry. So the term of the use, the temporary use, is the biggest issue before you tonight. We'd ask that you talk about that specifically and include that in your recommendation to the council. Another issue is, given the proposed temporary use of 12 to 24 months, what is a reasonable level of site improvement for the property? And I have a photo here of the existing frontage conditions, and at the very bottom half you see the completed curb, gutter, and sidewalk that's at North Block Hotel. It ends abruptly and transitions to a dirt and gravel section of sidewalk, and then the driveway and sidewalk sections that are not in conformance with the town standard. They're asphalt rather than concrete. They're not the required 5-foot width. They don't have an ADA transition, and we see the railroad ties that are used. An owner is required to maintain sidewalks, and there may be, we could apply that standard to the section that isn't paved and require that to be improved. New developments are also required to install new curb, gutter, and sidewalk that's to standard, which you see for the North Block property, and that's something that we could require at this time of the development, given the longer term of the requested temporary use and the fact that occupancy is sought for the buildings on site, so we're bringing people to the site that weren't otherwise invited. It's also to serve as parking for employees and special events. And so the question is this a good time to require the full curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements be made? If that's done, there's likely going to be a change when Restoration Hardware develops the site, where some or all of it is torn out and redone, whether that makes sense or not. I did check with the Department of Public Works to get some rough estimates as the cost of doing that work. And I think we're looking at least $10,000 for the lineal cost per square foot, for the cost per square foot and lineal foot of the different improvements. And that's because this would be a small project that's not part of a greater development. It would be less to the applicant if we were to hold off until they fully develop the site. So that is a second question before you. Another issue relates to landscape improvements and other screening measures that are appropriate for the property itself and the appearance from Washington, but also for adjacent neighbors, perhaps at Burgundy Commons, since the proposed trailer would be just 5 feet from the south side property line and the driveway that accesses Burgundy Commons. There are some trees that provide some screening on the south side of the parcel that you see here from at the south end of the parking lot. There's not lower level landscaping, and that may be appropriate. The applicant is proposing the landscaping at the back of the sidewalk, these two triangles you see here, and staff is proposing a more extensive landscaping on the north and south sides of the property, and that from the street this should provide a level of relief and some necessary improvement for the temporary use. So we've included a condition to that effect. Parking for the temporary use is also an issue, and the 1,400 square foot office requires 5 spaces. We know there are 6 employees. There are about 8 stalls on the north side of this parking lot, and they are marked, and they should be able to serve that need. It is worth mentioning that the proposed stairs and landing would encroach slightly into the 24-foot wide drive aisle, and so it would require some, skill and consideration by drivers so as to not hit buildings. And that's not a condition that would be approved for a new development, but may be appropriate for a temporary use. There's also the gravel section that's bound by the loop driveway that the applicant would replenish with gravel for a more durable surface with a better appearance. And this could be used by employees as well, to keep employees out of the neighborhood, and perhaps to open up parking on the Masonry site. The parking would also be used for special events in this location. So I have heard from Mayor John Dunbar and from a resident at Burgundy Commons, and they both expressed concerns about the long-term nature of the temporary use for up to 2 years, for the visual impacts to the Burgundy Commons neighborhood and the screening that would be necessary to shield this structure. And they also raised concern with the Masonry parking lot, their on-site parking lot adjacent to this site, and the fact that limousines and other drivers enter the one-way driveway the wrong way, that they block the driveway, and there have been several conflicts out there. The driveway is signed with appropriate signage advising motorists it's one way, not to enter, that it's private, but this continues to be an issue of concern to those neighbors. So we are recommending that you look at the 3 applications tonight, being the request for design review, the request for a temporary structure permit for up to 1 year, and potentially consideration of an exception to allow the temporary structure for greater than 1 year, and make a recommendation to the town council that we'll take to them at a future meeting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for staff?
Yes. Sandra, to what extent, if any, are your proposed conditions of approval triggered by the request for months 13 to 24? That is to say, if the request for 12 months, do you think you would be recommending different conditions of approval?
No, I think that our conditions are for 12 or 24 months, whichever it may be.
Second question for you is, how does staff define active pursuit? Twice in this report, you reference actively pursuing a building permit. How would you define active pursuit?
Meaning that we are aware that they're working with their architects to submit the building permit set, or they're in active red line review of their building permit, that they've received their entitlements and they're in communication with the building department.
Those are my only 2 questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
As the property sits there, no matter who owns it, and no matter if nothing's going on, the owner is not required to have already improved the sidewalks?
It will not be triggered, no, until the project is developed in some way. They need to maintain them, but to bring them up to current standard would be tied to the development of the parcel.
That's my question.
I do have a third question. The staff report implies that of the 2 choices, 24 months as a fixed term is preferable to the possibility of serial 12 months approvals. Am I correct in inferring that? All else being equal?
I think that it is more in keeping with the code to approve the 12 months, but we wanted to show a willingness to be able to make conditions to approve the 24 months.
Maybe I'll rephrase the question. What's objectionable about serial 12 months approvals?
I think staff would prefer that because of the difficulty in making the exception findings.
Then I must have misread the staff report, because if I understand it,
I would say that it could be confusing because we went between the 12
if
and the
this route
24
is
months.
taken, the town may be setting itself up to have the trailer in place for longer than inspected. I interpreted that part of page 3,
So did I.
the last paragraph of section 2, to imply that you wouldn't recommend serial 12 months permits.
No, I think we're open to either option based on what the ZDRB thinks is reasonable. I
Okay.
think that whether we're doing two serial 12 months or one 24 months, we're probably in for the same end result. What's the reasonable way of getting there? And setting a precedent for greater than 1 year with the initial approval is definitely in conflict with the zoning ordinance chapter unless we can make those exception findings.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Great. We would love to hear from the applicant.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks to Sandra and Bob. We were kind of pressed in getting information to them, and they were helpful and responsive, so we appreciate that. I'm Michael Polensky. I'm the owner of Masonry. I think it's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I've been up here. And I think what I want to say, a couple things right off the bat, we're really flexible about what this ends up being. So the 2 years was really simply trying to think how long it's going to take to get a lot developed and trying to be respectful of everybody's time to not have to come back. But if 12 months is what is normal, we're fine with 12 months. The reality is that the hope is that we're in front of town in the next 2 to 3 months with kind of a more formalized concept of what this will be, what RH will do with this particular piece of land. And then the hope is that it is in construction maybe beginning in Q2 of next year, and that we're through construction by the end of Q2 the following year. But here's what I can tell you about what's happening. And we have to be a little careful because I think this is probably a first for town, but RH is a publicly traded company. So we have issues with what can be talked about and what can't be talked about until it's fully disclosed in public. And what I can tell you is that there's not going to be a proposal that this is going to be a restoration hardware. That's not what this is going to be. This is going to be a very different concept than they've ever done before. And what I can tell you is basically going to be an expansion of what we've done at Masonry, and will include wine tasting, will include retail, and the real thought and focus behind what this will be is really all about food, kitchen, wine, and all the things that we kind of celebrate here in Napa. What is public is what RH is doing with their business plan. This information is now fully accessible over the last couple of months, and they've got, I think, 5 of their large galleries that they've built now in Houston, Scottsdale, Boston, I think Cherry Creek, and Los Angeles. And simply what RH is doing is moving out of the malls, going from these 7,000 or 8,000 square foot mall stores into these very large galleries. Boston, which opened a couple of months ago, is 40,000 square feet. And what that allows RH to do is to more completely kind of put on display what their current business model is. What we will be helping them add to that business model is essentially what we're already doing at Masonry, which is the wine aspect, the antique aspect, and the art. Art was launched on Friday in New York. They opened their first RH Contemporary Art Gallery, which will be a very specific business separate from all the other furnishing galleries. What they want to look to this space for in the existing Masonry business is the authority and the authenticity of RH entering kind of the food and wine space. Right now, the kitchen is the only room in the house that RH is not in. So they do nothing until a couple of months ago. They did nothing in the kitchen. Now they do a little bit of tabletop, but in the next year you'll see kind of a much bigger introduction of everything having to do with the kitchen, which includes food, which includes wine, which includes all aspects of the kitchen. So what this will be is, again, an expansion of what Masonry is already, and probably a little bit more food than what we do today, if that is what the town is interested in doing. And we also we think there's some interesting opportunities to be very local serving as well, some pieces that we think are missing for the town of Yountville and the people that live in Yountville. So there'll be aspects of that. So I want to be very clear up front, this will not be a restoration hardware. The year, we're totally flexible on. Where, if we can go back to the map where the containers are. Where the containers go, we're flexible. So if the town has a different feeling on that, the only reason we are kind of showing them back here is to get them out of sight, so that they're the furthest from the public as possible. And kind of where we sit, the masonry building is here, our backyard area is here, and we just want a bit of an open view line here so that we're not disturbing that view. But we're totally flexible, so if somebody has different ideas, we don't have a big focus on that. We requested 4. We may only need 2. And again, until we kind of get settled and moved in, we won't really know. But again, out of respect for everybody's time, we didn't want to have to request 2 and then come back through this process and request another 2 containers. And so we went from 4 containers to 1 trailer and 3 containers, and that's kind of where we exist today. And when we talk about office space, we have a full-time main office for the overall brand that sits down on Trancas and Big Ranch. And that's where we have full-time office space. This is really for the times of the day when somebody needs to kind of sit down and write a thank you note to a client or get on the computer and do some emails when it's slow. But it's not 6 people sitting there full-time. These are all the people that work at Masonry and then just need a place to go sit and do some work when it's slow. So it's not a full-time office that's sitting there. I think the only thing I would mention on the report, as I said, we're flexible on pretty much everything. The thing that I would ask is that we're not asked to deal with the sidewalk in a meaningful way today, because we don't yet know what the access will look like. And it may very well not look like the way it is today with the driveways on either side and kind of a horseshoe. And I think there's an image that may show that better. But there is one architectural illustration that we've done, which actually is a driveway right in the middle, which would access the very back by driving through an archway. And again, just provide more frontage on the street and kind of make the driveways disappear. The comments on the parking, the existing, I'll remind the town that we actually, and I forget the number, but we actually put in 5 or 6 more parking spaces than what we were required to, and we did that happily. We've put up signs when we were asked to put up signs to direct the traffic, and we try and have our team actively manage and kind of go out there and work with the limo drivers to not park, and we tell them that they can't do that. So we're aware of it. I'm not aware of complaints, and the conflicts, I think was the word. I'm not aware of that at all. But we do try and actively manage it. One of the solutions that may come out of this is that we've talked about actually being able to access the back parking from where the Masonry parking is now. So people would pull in where the parking lot is at Masonry and then go into the back. That may actually help that whole process, so that it just gets all the parking kind of out of that way. That's a thought. We don't know where that'll end up. So that's really it. So we're really flexible on most of the aspects. The only thing I would ask is that we're not asked to kind of redo the sidewalk at this point until we get a little bit further with what the plans are.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I think he's already answered it, but I'm going to repeat it nevertheless. Of all the proposed conditions of approval, the one you object to is the sidewalk, but the others you're at peace with. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and part of it is that when we've had to look at doing some asphalt things before, and the major expense was frankly just getting the trucks out there to do it. And whether you're doing 2 feet or 50 feet, you know, that's incremental, but there's a big expense just getting it there and all the design work you have to do. So it gets pretty expensive very quickly to do just a little bit.
Thank you. That's my only question.
If they really did start with construction and plans were approved and it started second quarter next year, like you were talking, this will become, the temporary structure will become the construction trailer, that you don't have a problem sharing your office space
Yeah, it
with
wouldn't
them?
be. I don't think that'd be an issue at all.
Okay.
Because again, it's not like we have 6 full-time people sitting there.
Okay.
And the one thing, just to that I skipped over, but to give you a sense of what's going on, Next year, in 2014, RH will open 5 of their new big gallery concepts. So that's already slated. We know what the towns are. We know what the kind of target dates are. The following year, they start to open 10 to 15 of them a year. And that's why, when I tell you the thought is to have construction up and running soon, again, they want that authority and that authenticity of this is born of Napa and Yountville, and they can point to that and say, this is where it all came from. So that's their impetus for wanting to get this up and running as quickly as possible before we start to see a lot of these come online in 2015. So.
Okay, those are my questions.
Karen?
Yeah, I just had 2 questions. The first is the landscaping that you're proposing to add on, is that meant to hide the office, or is that just, what's the purpose of that? Is that supposed to camouflage the office space, or is it just
Really
for something to do?
suggested by town and staff. Again, we're open and flexible. We don't, frankly, I don't think we want to spend a lot of money on landscaping that's going to get mowed over maybe in a couple months from now.
Okay.
What we want to do is have the lot look better than it's looked in the last 6 years. We were one of the people that complained about the lot, and asked for help from the town in kind of getting things done and sight line, getting big trucks out of the front. So, because we're the ones that were frankly impacted more than anybody. So we want to take good care of it. We don't want to spend a lot on landscaping, but we want to do what the town wants to do to feel good about it. But if that's as simple as putting down gravel and mulch to have a clean, defined look, let's do that. If it's important to have plants there, then let's have that conversation. So, but we're hoping to move things very quickly, and the target meeting was to be in November to do kind of the internal strategy meetings with RH in terms of getting back in front of town to say, hey, here's what we're thinking about. What do you think? And that's now been moved to January.
Can I ask staff to go back to the parking concern? Is that
Sure.
kosher?
I simply noted that the area on the paved parking lot that's proposed for parking doesn't strictly meet the town standard because the landings encroach into what would be the required 24-foot wide backup aisle. But that we don't really think it's that big an issue because it's really a minor encroachment by the stairs and landings, and it's not a permanent long-term use. So as long as employees are aware of the constrained area, it should work fine.
And then you mentioned limo drivers and residents having conflicts. I was
Well, that is something that we're aware of through neighbors. We don't
What's happening
hear
again? I'm
of
just wondering
them
what's happening.
specifically when they happen. We'll hear after the fact that limo drivers went the wrong way or they blocked something, but staff isn't generally advised at the time, so we haven't gone out there and observed it. We've
I can show you
secondhand.
if that'll help you.
I'm just trying to figure out where this is
Do we
happening.
have any illustration that shows our parking?
No. Oh,
Yeah,
here
I
we
can
go.
show you right
Yeah.
here.
Please take the
This is a
microphone.
one-way street.
Sorry, thanks, Jason.
It's where the
Slide
little
up.
white arrow is near the
There we
red
go.
line.
So what we're talking about is limos, when this gets full,
That's
limos,
Mason Reed's parking lot.
limos will drive in here. There's signage right here on either side that we put up that says "Do not enter wrong way." And what happens sometimes is limos will come and just park right here. And so, and even though there's room for people to get out, I think sometimes it's irritating for the neighbors. And again, our team is trained to actively manage this and tell them not to park there. And especially now that we have access to this, it's even easier. We just say, look, go park over here in the back, not up here, park back here. But that's the issue that we deal with. And again, we try and actively manage it as best we can. And if we can do better, we'll let us know what you need us to do.
Thank you. Was there any more questions for the applicant?
Not for me.
We would entertain public comment now. Please state your name and speak into the mic, please.
Hey, my name's Sean Larkin. I live in Burgundy Commons for the past 12 years. And I'm all for Michael doing what he's doing. I think he did a beautiful job in masonry, apart from putting the air conditioning unit next to my bedroom. But I think what he plans to do is great. I just, I had no other way of how to approach Michael for recommendations. He wants to put his trailers back there, that's fine. I only recommend that he moves the office building back to maybe here, because when we drive out here, his proposed office building, the elevation here is 4 to 5 feet higher, and he puts a 12-foot structure. Now we have like a 20-foot wall of China as we're driving out, and it's not going to be attractive unless he plans on doing some landscape behind it. So I don't think it's a big deal for him to move it up against 29. I can't speak for 11 Burgundy Commons because their living room window looks onto that parking lot, and I don't think they're going to be very happy if they're looking at a big container, which is going to will really block their view, because my friend Jack Edwards used to live in that apartment, so I know what it looks like. Another recommendation I think would be great for Michael is he doesn't have a problem with limousines and buses, which I've seen all weekend, that drop the people off right in front masonry. So what I suggest is do the same thing that North Block Hotel did with the cutout in the front of the lot. And as far as the limousines driving through the complex, yeah, thank you for the signs. There is a new tenant with a couple of children that played right on the corner there as you come in, and I did actually stop a limousine. I stopped a car coming through this weekend. It came through the wrong way. I made him back up all the way out, and the limousine I actually caught when he came out, because he went through there so fast. I got his license plate, and I told him if I catch him again, I'm going to call the sheriff's department. So it is a serious problem. If these guys do make that shortcut, the limousines that do park in Michael's parking lot, they're big, and it's very hard for them to back up onto the street. And it is a violation for them to stop in front of masonry, because it blocks the traffic to get around. So I suggest if you can incorporate that parking lot, Michael, and put a little cutout in there, move the office building to the back of 29. I don't care if you leave it there for 5 years, but I think 11 Burgundy might have a problem with the trailers blocking their view, and that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm going to give my 1 cent. Hi, I'm Marie Rossi, and I just heard about this from Sean about an hour ago. So I have relied strictly on what Sean, who is my tenant, has provided for me. And I concur with him 100%. We have done business before, along with Mr. Pulaski, and so I want to make it right for everybody. I feel I'm very fortunate to live in a beautiful community like this, and this is my retirement. And I need it to be that my little piece of heaven be something that I can sell for the right price, and it's important to me. That's what people are buying here in our beautiful little community. The only thing I wanted to ask, how large is that parcel? So I don't have to look it up, just so I can. 22,000 feet. 22,000 square. Okay. And the proposal, as it is now, seems fair. It's part of doing business. It's part of construction. You have to do that. The word temporary fits very good for me. I had seen the improvement of the weeds being gone and all that. I go, wow, what's going on here? This is good. So I did notice that someone cares. obviously, fine art. People don't go look at fine art when it's in a not so good neighborhood. That doesn't say. So that was a good thing. The meat is, I hope that in the future, what is going to be permanent, and that's how it's going to fit. We still will have the limousines. We still, is that parking that you may be able to use now for the next couple of years? Great. But then does it revert back to the same as it is now? And I will also concur with Sean. I don't live there, but I go there, and yes, there are people and limos that use that access. If there's some way that we could, as homeowners, maybe put a gate or something that would make improve the property, and it would eliminate they just couldn't use that. And yes, he's right. They come around there, and children should have the right to be, God forbid if something were to happen. So I think that's it. And we will rely on the wisdom of our city fathers, town fathers, that what is going to be there permanently will be attractive to all of us and beneficial. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we will talk amongst ourselves, and I'll open it up to the ZDRB.
Can I mention one other thing? Sure.
This is yours.
You know, one of the things that I forgot to mention, and again, we're open to it if it's interesting to the town, that can help in the front is we can maybe put sculpture or sculptures in the front as well, if that is interesting and helpful, and if it's not, that's okay. So that was one of the things that Mick had mentioned. We've got a couple of large sculptures from our artists that are going to be moving from locations, and we could do that on a temporary basis if that's interesting.
Thank you. Jason?
I'd like to begin just to try to ask a question that might address Ms. Rosie's question. Burgundy Way is a private street, Bob, Sandra, as you well know. I'm unaware of any ordinance that would prohibit the homeowners association from seeking to install a gate. Yes, they'd have to comply with fire egress and whatnot, but am I correct? There's no ordinance that would prevent that private street from being gated at its current egress?
No, I don't think so, as long as we can maintain safety vehicle access and maintain the easement for whomever else has rights to use it. But I think that we can definitely be open to that.
So in short, for Marie's benefit, she's free to seek that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Is that your one question?
Well, I'd like to listen to what others say first, but I wanted to answer Marie's question first.
Karen?
I think if it's a situation where we're looking at a one-year term and this is a temporary 2 to 3 month deal before more design goes before the board or before the town council, it seems that it wouldn't be a problem to me. You know, pushing it back parallel to, or I should say, yeah, parallel to the 3 containers, the office space, in any way you look at it from driving on Washington Street, it'll be noticeable. So for me, I mean, or for people passing by, it's an eyesore anyway. If it helps the tenants or the people living in the house to move it, that's, I mean, where it's placed, I mean, I think that's gonna be up to masonry and up to the council. I'm not opposed to it, and I don't think, and I think so long as it is something that's going to be temporary, and I don't know if there's a guarantee that is in place other than the fact that you only have a 1-year limit or a 6-month limit, or how does that work? It's a 1-year limit?
They're seeking a
potentially a
1-year,
2?
potentially 2.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably recommend a 1 year.
What's it? Another question? As it comes up, for further development? For a 22,000 square foot lot, what is the acceptable square footage for the development? Are you going to allow 10,000, 20,000 square feet?
Roughly 55, it's roughly, FAR is 5,500 square feet, I think.
We can't really answer that question now because nothing is before us. It would take some review of the code and evaluation. So, but I would say stay tuned as the project moves forward.
Oh, well, okay, thank you.
For design review, construction trailers are not very attractive, but it's part of the process. And I would suspect, no matter where you place it now, if construction started, it might have to be moved based on what's planned and where. But it might as well start in the least offensive place for the neighbors. I think that would be good. And I'm not comfortable extending what is sort of a standard from 1 year to 2. I'd only be happy with the 1 year, just not to set that precedent of 2. I think that's all.
Okay. We're asked to give a formal recommendation on 3 actions. The first, design review, I have no comment. It's a temporary trailer. With respect to the sidewalk, I don't think it's out of line that staff sees a nexus between this project and refurbishing the sidewalk. I am philosophically opposed, and I guess that ship has sailed, that property owners are required to maintain a public right-of-way. So I start off not supporting it. With that said, if the approved proposal ever becomes 12 months, I would support conditioning the sidewalk work be done now. However, I'm not supporting 24 months. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think we need to tie our hands for 2 years, nor do I think we need to tie somebody else's hands in the future that in month 11 that the applicant can't return and show substantial progress as well. So I'm willing to recommend approval of the 12 months with all other conditions of approval except for the sidewalk, provided lastly that you define active pursuit as all entitlements are secured and an application for a building permit has been made. Not simply this sort of nebulous awareness of things going on, but a concrete discretionary approval and a building permit application.
Is that by the end of the 12 months, so I understand? Or is that?
Yeah, so this is a bad way to do it with the, even though it's informal, the conversation from chair to chair, but I'll answer it nevertheless, yes.
So I agree with just about everything that's been set up here. Without being redundant, I think the 1 year term is fair. And by the way, I appreciate your willingness to be flexible on that. I believe that there should be some work done with the residents next door in taking their concerns into consideration. Sean, I thought your idea of having the carve out is a good idea. I know the area at Redwood and North Block, and I think that works well. So I would certainly suggest that to the council, that you guys think of that, especially at that area. It gets a little, there's an intersection right there and it can get a little dicey, and you know the drill. And I think as much as you can do to continue to make that lot pretty prior to construction, I think I would support the staff's recommendations on that. Within reason, I don't think you should be landscaping the thing with dug-in plants and trees, but maybe planter boxes and artwork and so forth. It seems fair to me. So that's my, overall, I'm in support of this for 1 year, and that's my feelings. So with that being said, I'll see if I can do this better this time. I will invite a motion from the ZDRB.
That's
Jason,
Jason's
yeah.
specialty.
Go ahead, Jason.
I will move that we recommend the council approve design review for the temporary structures and approve a 12-month occupancy period, that the condition that the sidewalk be replaced as part of the temporary use be stricken, and that prior to the expiration of the temporary use, the applicant must show that all entitlements for a subsequent redevelopment have been secured and a building permit has been applied for before any consideration for an extension is granted, and that the applicant should agree to these conditions in writing as a condition of the 12-month permit rather than the standard 6-month.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
And can we have a vote?
All in favor?
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
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 Can I just ask one quick question? If somebody has to do the curb before the end of the 12-month period? Clarify
No, I'm
Or
moving that
contingent
require,
upon getting that.
neither. I move that the requirement for the sidewalk improvements be stricken
Got it, okay.
from our recommendation for a 12-month temporary occupancy.
I agree.
So just to be clear and clarify that vote one more time, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
And if I can just say, thank you for whatever part you had in bringing this to this end of town. It's going to be a wonderful addition at some point.
Working on it for 2 years, so we're pretty excited.
Good.
Great. Karen, you can go.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Agenda item number 9, and we'll note that Kieran is departing for the rest of the evening.
Thanks for
Thank
staying
you.
through that
Thank
second
you.
vote.
Thanks, yeah,
Bye,
for
guys.
making it.
Bye now.
Thanks for that motion. That was well said and
Thank you.
much more than
I don't know
I
how
was
we
capable
could do
of.
this without you, yeah.
So
Steph, go ahead, sorry.
we've presented to you a draft template for an updated ZDRB agenda. It's a little more formal than the one we've been using. It includes all of the members' names. It includes an item for Pledge of Allegiance, and it provides information on certain items like public comment, so someone in the public knows what that section means. And the last page behind the adjournment, it includes more information that we hope will be helpful to applicants. We're still at a working stage of coming up with this template, and we may add a few more things, but we wanted to present it to you and see if you have any comments or make any suggestions.
Do we do more than just post the agendas? Is there, like when we have our arts agendas, we mail it out to all the people on our email list that are interested, in case they might want to come? Is there anything like that? or
We
just post it?
allow people to sign up for the email list. I don't think there's anyone on it right now. So
Well, that speaks
it's-
of the popularity, okay.
we do send it out to town council and of course the
Sure.
ZDRB.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know if we have anyone on the list.
Okay.
And then we post it at town hall, at the post office, at community center. So
I've forgotten an email.
you
You
haven't?
do send it out via email?
Christine does?
You get it?
I
via
haven't
email?
gotten it yet.
Okay. Well, I'll check with her on that.
That's right.
You, of course, get it
My
in the
mailbox.
mail, in
Yeah.
the mailbox.
No,
She brings it to my porch,
yes, I know.
but she has to see me on the holidays.
No, I think it's a good idea to explain a little, it helps explain what's going on. And people understand if they had an interest, what to expect.
I agree. I think the more, or the less nebulous you make this for the public especially, in particular, the more participation we may get, and I think that's a good thing. So that's my feelings.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple, what you've done here. Makes sense.
The only thing, I don't know if it could be put in this, but I have seen when people have come and made their presentation and we have our vote and we opposed, whatever, and we're done, we go on to the next thing, and the people don't know what to do. They don't know, are they going to get something in the mail? Is somebody going to contact them? How do they know what the next step is? And I don't know if that can be written into agenda format, but I've seen that on people's faces
Okay.
out there.
Yep. Or is that something that the chair should should advise them of, or staff
Oh.
would then have a follow, yeah, I kind of
Oh,
feel the same.
finish after our vote, explain what the next step
Okay.
is or something. to the
Well, what I
applicant.
do is I send them a notice of action following the meeting, so they have something in writing, what the ZDRB decision was. I could just simply work with applicants so they don't have that moment of confusion at the end of the
Or it
meeting.
could just be.
I think if you
af-
just said what
yeah,
you just said, at the end of each,
Vote, yeah, when we
agenda
finish
item,
with
yeah.
the
Okay.
application.
just say, there will be a follow-up insofar as a letter, and
Okay,
I think that would resolve a lot of the questions or
okay,
looks on people's face,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Okay.
have seen those.
Yeah.
Nothing to add.
Do you have any announcements you want to make? And then we don't really have anything else to share, so unless the board members would like to share anything, perhaps we could.
Going backpacking,
Congratulations.
Nice.
Where?
the Yola Boli Middle Eel Wilderness.
Say that again?
The Yola Boli Middle Eel Wilderness.
Where is that?
It's in the Coast Range between the Central Valley and the Northern California coast,
Sounds nice.
source of the Eel River. So I'm excited about sharing that.
With your son?
No, he's in Maryland. All grown up.
Wow, that's a long way away.
That was exciting. We all share that. And Mrs. Janes and I just visited Tristan at St. John's, so that was kind of neat.
Bet. But it's beautiful this time of year.
Yeah.
Lucky kid.
Well, then I will I will leave it to the board to make a motion to adjourn.
I would like to suggest we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.